whatever. I've got to get some work done. You can literally stay up all night and be on the, oh, hello, hello. Yeah, we're fighting again. Well, hello, my spooky friends and wonderful wild weirdos. How are you doing? You look lovely. And if you, I always forget to say this. If you are new here, I'm Silky. My name's back there. No, that says spooky. I'm not spooky. I am kind of spooky, but I'm and this is Avalon Cottage, well, where we tell ghost stories submitted by you and premonitions, glitches in the matrix, and we're going to do some new stuff. Welcome to spooky season. I'm going to try to upload a little bit more this month, and I might get kind of crazy and do some costumes. What about that? You want to see any costumes? I've got like stuff laying around right now. I just have my. This was sent in by a friend of mine. Can you see the eyeballs in here? This one, Laura, if you see this, I still have the hat. I still have all the stuff. I love it for spooky season, and so I'm feeling festive. Yeah, Scully can't have all the fun, right? Okay, all right. Let's go into our premonition stories. This one is sent in by Debbie Payshon. I had a premonition that my uncle died. Once I had the premonition, it was 2 days later that he passed. I also had a premonition of my brother's dog dying. That one took, I believe, 3 days. Wow. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of scary when you know, right? But if you think that is weird, listen to this next one. This is by Lacey Russell. I have a great uncle that had a premonition of his own death and died the next day. That to me is insane. Now, as a nurse, I've told you patients tell you when they're going to pass, even when they don't have any symptom. Like you think, no, you're doing fine. You're going to be home soon. They know, but that's weird. Like, was he in that situation? But I don't think I don't know that I'd wanna have a premonition. I don't think I wanna know. I don't know, just let it be a surprise, you know? Just don't let it be painful. I mean, I do have a list of ways I don't wanna die, but then I look at Scully and I'm like, "Well, he's having the time of his afterlife." Who knew? Okay, this one is by Catherine G8669. I have had several premonitions, but the one that had the strongest physical sensation happened when I was driving home one snowy night. I worked at an animal emergency clinic and got off about 1 a.m. As I was driving home, I suddenly had a flashback to a time I was driving home on a rainy night in California and a car spun out in front of me. I, um, I almost hit it. At the same time, I had this flashback. I had the sensation you get as a kid when someone would pretend to break an egg on your head. Oh. Then they run their fingers down the sides of your head and it gives the sensation of the egg running down your head. Yes, I've had, long story, but I've had people do that. It is a weird sensation. Well, I knew something was up, so I slowed way down. The roads were icy and there wasn't much traffic where I was. About a mile down the road, I came to an intersection. There were a few cars on the other side. When the light turned green, I went through the intersection still very wary. All of a sudden, here comes this car on the other side of the road, and he's going way too fast for the conditions. He spins out and crosses right in front of me. He missed me and went up onto the lawn of a church to the right of where I was. It was very similar to that night in California. Yeah, I mean, so you had all of a sudden a flashback of a memory of something that happened a long time ago on a rainy night, but just that, like your conscious, whatever your spirit knew that, hey, it's going to be like that. Because, how often do we think of things that happened 10, 15, 20 years ago? Like, we don't. So when you get these flashes in your head and it comes out of nowhere, it could be your spirit inside of you saying, hey, you're going to encounter this situation or somebody else's, depending on how it goes. So take heed, right? I think that is very interesting. And if you had not been wary at that intersection, you'd been going faster, he may have actually hit you. Wow. That is a great story. Thank you for sending it in. Okay, this is by Lori Moore. I've always been the odd one, the girl who felt more than most, who saw shadows lurking just beyond the veil of reality. Twice I've had premonitions of an unexpected death, and each time the weight of it pressed down on my chest like a stone. Let me take you back to the first time it happened, a memory that still haunts me. I was just 10 years old, blissfully ignorant of the darkness that could seep into the lives of those I loved. My mother was pregnant with my little sister, a bundle of joy I could hardly wait to meet. But one night, as I lay in bed, a chill washed over me. I saw her, my sister, lying still, surrounded by shadows. The vision was so vivid, so real, that I couldn't help but speak it out loud. Mom, I think something's wrong with the baby. The moment those words escaped my lips, I felt the air grow thick with tension. My parents exchanged worried glances, and I was grounded for what they deemed a sinister thought. Oh, no, that's not fair. They didn't understand. They couldn't. I was on a church trip that weekend, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing back home. When I returned, my world shattered. My mother had suffered a placental abruption, and my sister was gone. I remembered my parents' faces, etched in grief, the anger that followed, the accusation that somehow I had willed it into being. I was just a child, but the guilt settled deep like a shadow I couldn't shake. Let me tell you first how sorry I am for that. I mean, I know that people do things in their grief that make no sense, especially when you have an unexpected situation like that. I guess some people just can't deal with natural things that happen and they want to blame it on somebody. But that, it was, in my opinion, and I'm sorry, but it was cruel. It is cruel to put that on a child because they have a premonition, like as if you wished it to happen. Wow, that definitely can derail you for events later in life. Mm. Fast forward a decade, and I was barely 20, a wildflower in a field of thorns. I was dating a man 15 years my senior, a decision I would come to regret, but at that moment, I was lost in his charm. Girl, we all been there. Yeah, guilty. Yeah, what a crapshoot that was. One fateful day, he went fishing with his best friend, and I was left alone. The quiet of our home wrapping around me like a shroud. As I lay on the couch, an eerie vision invaded my mind. There he was, my boyfriend, lying in a wooden coffin, the look of peace on his lifeless face, nerving me. Panic gripped me. I grabbed my phone. My heart started racing as I dialed his number over and over, but he was out of range, lost in the wilderness, and I was left with my dread. Hours passed, my anxiety twisting tighter around my throat. I could almost hear the ominous knock at the door, the hushed whispers of police officers bringing bad news. Just when I thought I could take it no longer, he finally walked through the door. Relief flooded my senses, and I burst into tears, spilling my fears and the vision I had seen. He brushed it off, reassuring me that he was fine, but the knot in my stomach wouldn't loosen. Then the phone rang. The world around me fell silent as I answered, only to be met with a cacophony of distress. A man's voice echoed through the line, frantic and broken, repeating one word, Dad. I handed the phone to my boyfriend, my heart racing. He looked at the caller ID, confusion knitting his brow. It's my brother, he said. and in that moment, dread seeped back in. I watched him pale as he listened, his face transforming from confusion to horror. What? He's dead? The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. It was his father, killed in an ATV accident. My mind raced back to the vision, the coffin. I hadn't seen him, but his father, the man who I had never even met. We rushed to his family 2 states away, the car filled with a silence that felt wrong. He mentioned my premonition only once, pondering if perhaps I had seen his father instead of him in my vision. I had no idea. I had never seen the man in my life, and I shivered at the thought. Upon arrival, I entered a house heavy with grief. His mother embraced him, sobs mixing with the air thick with sorrow. And as I stood there, a stranger in their world, my gaze landed on a photograph hanging on the wall. My breath caught in my throat. The man in the picture looked identical to my boyfriend, but older, dressed in clothes from another era. The realization crashed over me like a wave. I had seen him, not my boyfriend, but his father, the ghost of the past now lost to the present. The chill of that moment still lingers, the weight of the truth a shroud around my heart. How could I have seen it, and why does the darkness always seem to find me? I don't know if I believe in fate or if these visions are merely cruel tricks of the mind, but the knowledge that I've glimpsed death, twice now, leaves me wondering what else lies hidden in the shadows, waiting for me to uncover. I've had more visions and premonitions, but these two stick with me the most, largely because they involved unexpected deaths that shook me to my core. There have been smaller moments too, where people looked at me in disbelief and asked, "How did you know that would happen?" Honestly, I still can't explain it, and that certainly can be unsettling. But as an ICU nurse, I've learned to embrace this unique sensitivity. It sharpens my intuition, allowing me to sense when something isn't quite right with a patient, often before they show any clear signs of distress. It's a bit like having a sixth sense, and it has become a crucial part of how I care for others. Initially, I struggled with these experiences, feeling more burdened than blessed, but now I see my ability as a gift, one that allows me to make a positive impact in the lives of my patients and their families during some of their most vulnerable moments. Wow, those are quite some stories. I kudos to you. Yes, I think it hones your skill as a nurse. And speaking from one to another, I feel like it's really important that we see these tiny signs, right? And to notice things that are going sideways with a patient before it actually happens, even though there's nothing you can really put your finger on, or, everything seems fine. Very interesting. I am very sorry for the lack of understanding again from your parents. And I can imagine it was devastating to your boyfriend and the family as well. Again, people tend to think weird things when there's grief involved, right? Okay, we have time for one more story. This is by Katie Page 5985. Yes, I've had quite a few. I was engaged to my high school sweetheart and I was looking through a wedding dress catalog to get an idea of dress styles. I knew I wanted lace and a princess style. Then I found it, the perfect and most beautiful dress I had ever seen. Now, my family wasn't anywhere near rich, and I knew my dream dress wouldn't be found in my hometown of about 10,000 people, nor could we afford the listed price of $4,000 for my dream dress. Yeah, that's a lot of cha-ching. That night, I dreamt that I was wearing my dress the day of my wedding. Beautiful dream. The next day, we went to check out the two shops in town, but I left them very discouraged. On our way home, my sister in law recommended stopping by a little mom and pop shop that sold formal dresses. As I was going through their dresses but finding no wedding dresses, the old woman asked if I would be interested in a special order dress that was ordered but was canceled and never picked up. As she was getting it, she said it had been there for quite a while and paid for, so she was asking $300 for it. That seemed an amazing deal. But when she brought it out, all of our mouths dropped. It was my dream dress, albeit a bit big, size 12 to my size 1, but heck, let's try it. So there I was, standing there pinned into my beautiful dress and crying, as was everyone else in my entourage. We found a beautiful veil, paid for everything, which was an extraordinary price of $386 plus tax. My dad was very happy about it. I'm sure he was. Soon it was the day before my wedding. Everything was going great. That night, I had a very unusual dream. I dreamt while my dad was walking me down the aisle, the lace on my dress caught on one of the chairs and tore. Sure enough, as I was walking, the lace did get torn, although not as bad as it did in my first dream. My wedding was perfect, lovely, and as I look back these past 46 years, I must say that I've had many, many other premonitions. I also believe I've become even more empathetic. God bless everyone. Wow, that is a lovely story. And I can't imagine a dress being $4,000 all those years ago. That's too much now. Lord have mercy. I'm glad we ended on that note. Look, premonitions can be a great thing. Just because you have a premonition doesn't mean something terrible is going to happen, right? Wedding dress sounds lovely. All right. Thank you all so much for sharing those stories. Now, Scully, so you can have the computer. Look, you got to do what you got to do. And what I got to do now is let him talk to Miss Scullett. All right. I hope you have a great and wonderful evening, day, night, whenever you're watching this. But remember, whatever you do, just stay spooky, right? Bye bye.